Now, during my career, I've been lucky enough to have been working with some of my clients for many, many years, and I've built several different versions of their sites. And in today's video, I want to take you along with me on a recent site rebuild for one of those clients. Now, before we start, what this video isn't is a comprehensive design tutorial. While you see how and why I make certain design decisions and how they're implemented, if you're looking for that level of tutorial, there are loads of comprehensive design tutorials on the channel. Please take a look on there. Now, before we start, I quickly want to say that this video is kindly sponsored by Cloudways Hosting. While I'll be using Cloudways Hosting for that portion of the video, I won't be giving any opinions on the service they provide. Instead, I'll simply show you how to get the ball rolling with the hosting on the Cloudways platform. Then it's up to you. Okay, so let me start the video by covering one of the most important aspects of working on a design with a client, be it a new client or an existing client, and that is the design brief. Now, when working on a project, there are a couple of essential things that you need to focus on before even starting the design phase. Firstly, you need a design brief, and this can either be supplied by the client or you can work with them to create a hyper-focused design brief for the project. Secondly, the content required to fully realize that design brief and complete the site without any unforeseen delays. Now, I also like to have the client supply me with a half a dozen or so links to sites that they like and dislike, along with a brief description of what they do and don't like about each one of them. This allows me to kind of get into their head and see what a type of site designs resonate with them, and this can be absolutely invaluable when working on the initial draft of the site's design. Okay, so now that we've got a really simple idea of how I would start a site design, obviously there are a lot of other things to take into consideration, but this should just help shine a light on some of the basic things. So obviously the first thing we're going to need to do to get a site up and running is have some form of hosting. Today we're going to be using Cloudways, who've kindly sponsored this video. And the reason we're choosing Cloudways, apart from the sponsorship aspect, is the fact that it allows me to very easily scale things with the client. So if you're working with e-commerce, you can have times where the site just gets a huge amount of traffic, and having that ability to scale it and then scale back when you don't need those extra resources can be an absolute godsend. So with that in mind, we're going to go with Cloudways because they offer a very cost-effective way of working and we can scale very easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our free trial. So we're going to click on Start Free. Once we've done that, we're going to go through the process of signing up. And as you can see, we can sign in using LinkedIn and those kinds of things, or we can just sign up with our relevant details. And that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to just quickly drop my details inside here and then we can move on. So that's all my details put in, password setup and everything else. So let's just click on Start Free, and that's going to then go through the process of setting our account up, and then we'll just need to go ahead and confirm those details with the password and the email account that we've used for this setup. Okay, so you'll see now we get a nice little simple onboarding, but we can't complete this stage until we confirm our email address. So you can see at the top, we've sent a verification email to the email address you supplied. Click the confirmation link to activate your account. So before we do anything inside here, we need to activate that. So don't be fooled into thinking you can start this, because all the things that you choose will basically be wiped out once you kind of confirm. So let's quickly confirm that email address before we go any further, and then go through the process of setting up our Cloudways server. So this is the email you're going to receive from Cloudways once you set up your account. All we need to do is click that activate account option, and that'll take us back over then. We should already be logged in because we were logged in during the registration process, and now we've got everything confirmed. So now we can go ahead and follow through that wizard and set up exactly what we need to start off with. Now, I'm not going to go into tons of detail on how to set all this up because I've got 3 dedicated videos on how to do exactly that. So I will drop a link to those in the description below. So if you want to find out more about getting the most out of your Cloudways account, check those videos out. They should give you pretty much all the things you need to do. Okay, so with that being said, what do we have? We've got welcome to Cloudways. Okay, let's just get started. Now what we see when we log in for the first time and we've confirmed our account, we go through the process of deploying your managed application, which sounds very complicated, but it's not. It's very, very simple. All we're going to do is we're going to choose a couple of things, and that will then set up our server for us. Now, if you're not sure what to choose on here, there's a couple of things that might be deciding factors. Probably for most people, it's going to be the price. We basically have 5 different service providers for our cloud hosting: DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. Each one of those comes with different levels of resources and also different pricing structures. Now, for most people, DigitalOcean or Vultr may be more than enough. But if you want that sort of Amazon backup or that Google backup, you could choose something like AWS or the cloud platform, the Google Cloud Platform. But let's just stick to DigitalOcean for this example because it is the most cost effective. And if you're just starting out and you're new to cloud servers and money could be an issue, this is a good starting point. Okay, so we'll just quickly flick through these and you'll see, if you take a look at the bottom section, this is going to give us a basic pricing structure for the different service we may want and the different levels of server size, location, things like that. Okay, so you can see at the moment DigitalOcean with a 2 GB server size based in London, which is the closest to me being in the UK, will be $22 per month. We could drop that down to 1 GB, and you can see that drops the price down to $10 a month. Now, for a lot of sites, this will be perfectly fine. But like I say, the benefit of using something like Cloudways for cloud hosting is that we can ramp these up should we need to permanently or for a short base of time, because you are billed on an hourly rate. So if you need resources when you push a big campaign out, this can be a perfect option where you can just ramp up your resources to make sure that the site does not go offline, and then you can just drag that back down to what you had prior to that. Really flexible, and why I generally recommend something like this for when you're working with something like e-commerce. If we take a look at Linode, for example, you can see we can drop that down, and that's $12 a month, so not a massive difference. Vultr, and again you can see this is $11 a month for 1 GB, and this is on the server a standard size, so if you have a high frequency server, that will push the price up a little bit. And you can see we get little help icons to tell us more information about any of the options we may choose. So it's really cool to see that. AWS, on the other hand, is a lot more expensive, but it is a lot bigger. It's a lot more scale on there. You can ramp things up, and you can see the server size options are absolutely insane compared to the first 4 options or first 3 options we took a look at. So if you ramp this right the way up to the 24XL, that's going to cost you about $3,200 per month. Massive. But if your site's actually using those resources, you should be making good money, and that might be the perfect option. We're going to jump back to DigitalOcean. We're going to set this down to be 1 GB, and from there we can just set the final thing up, which is the location. Now, what I would always suggest whenever you're setting up any kind of server setup is look at where your audience is, not where you're located. For example, if you are dealing with a blog that has a massive amount of traffic coming from America or Canada, then you'd be better off setting your server location to be closer to your main audience. They should then get quicker sort of load times on your site. So just bear that in mind. And you can see with the DigitalOcean, we have a few different options available for different country locations: New York, Toronto, and so on. We'll leave this to London though, because this would be generally a UK-based company, so that would be perfectly fine. Next up, we have your application and server details. Again, this might sound quite complex, but let me just quickly break down the difference between application and server. The server is effectively where all the site files are going to reside. The application is just basically the software you're going to use, for example, WordPress or anything like that. This is where the confusion can come in, because the terminology may not seem what you're used to when you're dealing with, normal cPanel service and so on. So that's all it really means. Applications, WordPress, Joomla, those kinds of things. Server, where all your files reside. So with that information cleared up, let's just choose the application we want to install. So the first thing is, you can see version 5.42 of WordPress is selected, but we can choose anything from the list. So we can just install PHP with a custom app, we can install Magento, Drupal, and all those kinds of things. We're interested in WordPress, and we have 4 options currently. Just install WordPress on its own. We can install WordPress with WooCommerce, and it tells us the version numbers. As you can see, it's not currently running the latest version of WordPress, which is 5.5 at the time of recording, but that's no problem, because once we log into the account, We'll be notified there's an update. We can run the update, takes a couple of seconds. We can install multi-site, or we can do a clean install with no Cloudways optimization. And then again, that tells us the version is 5.42. For ease, let's just keep this really simple and say we want to install both WordPress and WooCommerce at the same time. So we'll choose that. We're going to give this a name, and we're just going to call this WPTuts ecom. Your server, we'll just call this WPTuts. And your project, WPTuts again. Now, what do these things really mean? They're just ways of grouping information together, the different sites or applications you may be working with. You can name your projects to give you something a little bit more obvious. It's pretty self-explanatory, and if you're ever unsure, the little eye icon will tell you exactly what these mean. But if you're just deploying one site inside your Cloudways account, it doesn't really matter too much what you put in there. It's just literally ways of you seeing exactly what's going on in there. Okay, so there's the key things we need to do. We've set the pricing, all those kinds of things. Now, we're not going to be billed because you notice I haven't had to put any card details in at all, any payment details, because this gives us a couple of days to test things out just to make sure that what you've set up works the way you want it to and that you're happy with the service. If at the end of it then you decide not to go ahead, well, you haven't got to do anything. It'll just basically cancel and wipe out anything you've done. If you do want to go ahead, you simply have to put your payment details in, and then you can have an account running on there. And what I will say is that in the time that I've been using these personally for my own site, it's been really cost effective to be able to work this way. Generally, it does work out about $10 per month, and that's pretty cool. So it's not going to break the bank if you want something that is scalable and you want to be able to have complete control over that scalability. Check them out. Up to you whether you want to go ahead with it. Okay, let's launch this now, and this is going to take a couple of minutes because what Cloudways basically are is an intermediary between you, the user, and the actual cloud hosting platform. So what that really means is you get a nice clean interface and you don't have to touch anything to do with your cloud server. In this case, the DigitalOcean server. So it's a nice easy way of mitigating complexity, but giving you full control over how everything works. Now this is going to take about 7 minutes to complete this process. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that run through, then we'll come back and take a look at the next stage. Okay, so we are all set up. Everything is now configured. You can see we have a switch between servers and applications. What we're going to do is we're going to quickly switch over to the applications, and we'll have a list of any applications we've created. In this example, just the one. So what we can do now is we can open up, we can delete this, we can create a clone app or staging site. We can click to go in and take a look at the site itself, or we can just click and go in and take a look at the other options we have available for this site. And one of the nice things to see inside here is you do have a free SSL certificate. If you're not sure what an SSL certificate is, it's basically a way of encrypting any data that gets sent via your site. Great for things like e-commerce sites, for contact forms, for things anywhere you submit data on your site. So you have one of those that's free as part of this. Now, quick mention, if your site sells lots and lots of items or high ticket items, it would be better to ensure you cover yourself with a higher level dedicated SSL certificate. Now, most hosting companies will allow you to purchase them directly through there, but there's lots of places you can grab an SSL certificate. So like I say, check out the limitations of the SSL certificate, and if you think that's viable for the e-commerce site that you're setting up. Just bear that in mind. Okay, so this is going to go through and tell us now how various different aspects of this work. So I'm going to quickly just get past all these because I don't want to sort of do that. This is more a case of an onboarding process for anyone that's not familiar. So what do we have? We have our access details, we have monitoring information, bot protection, domain management, and all those kinds of cool things. Because at the moment, we have this set up on a temporary URL. And this is exactly what you can see here. This is the URL that we've got set up temporarily for working on this site. Now, for this example, that's perfectly fine because this isn't about how to set up the platform. This is more a case of using the platform and showing you how to build the site. So I'm going to leave that as it is. But if you want to know more about how to do that, how to link a domain through to your account as part of Cloudways, again, that's already covered in one of my dedicated videos on Cloudways, so check that out. Okay, so with that all covered, let's just log in and take a look now and start building out the site. So we've got some default information set up, the admin panel, the username and the password are all set up for us. So all we need to do is simply click to open up a new tab, and then we can click to copy the username, and we'll just drop that inside there. And we'll do the same then for the password. Click to copy that. And you can see it's automatically copied, so we don't have to worry. I would always recommend you change the password to something a little stronger, because this is really quite minimal when it comes to passwords. For this demo though, it's perfectly fine. But if you're on a live account, make sure you update that. Okay, so let's just log in. And there we go. We'll just save that information, and we are now logged in to our account. Now, before we go any further, let's just quickly take a look at what's been installed and get rid of any stuff we may not want. Just come to our plugin section, and from there you can see we have the Akismet anti-spam, bot protection, Breeze, Hello Dolly, and WooCommerce. Now, Breeze is a cache-in plugin that Cloudways uses. You may want to use this to get a faster site with some caching facilities. You may want to use something of your own. For me, I'm simply going to get rid of the extra things that I don't want, because I want to just show you how we're going to build this site. So let's just get rid of those. We'll just deactivate anything that's active, and then we'll just quickly get rid of those plugins except for WooCommerce. So we'll just say delete. We'll apply that, say okay, get rid of those, and as you can see, gets rid of them pretty quickly. And we'll just finally just update to WordPress 5.5, so we've got the latest and greatest version of that, and the same goes for WooCommerce. So we're not going to bore you with doing this. We're going to just do that in the background, get a clean slate set up, and then we're going to take a look at how we start building the site out and all the other things that I want to go through. Okay, so now we've done a little bit of basic housekeeping. Let's go through the process of, first of all, setting up the basics of WooCommerce. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You could go in and manually set everything up if you wanted to, or you can run through the setup wizard. So let's go through the setup wizard first of all, and then we'll take a look at the next stages. So we'll run the setup wizard, and this is then going to take us through the basics of setting things up. So we're going to say, get started running quickly with our new improved setup experience. So if you've used this in the past, this is slightly different to what you've experienced previously. However, most of the same things are already in there. It's just been tarted up to look a little nicer. So the first thing you're going to do is drop in your address details. And I'm just going to fill in NAs on all these because it's not particularly important for what I'm doing. Let's just find the United Kingdom, and we'll just say Cardiff. We'll put the coast code of CF11. Okay, so we can choose the option for setting up a store for a client if you wanted to, but because we know all the details that are going to go in there, we're just going to ignore that and select continue. It's up to you if you want to allow them to grab data from when you're building your store. I'm going to say I continue without that information because I like to keep all that to myself. And then we've got the option to choose what type or what industry is your store actually in. Now for this one, we're going to be dealing with floral work and so on, so that's not actually listed here, so we're just going to say it's other, and then we're just going to put in florist. Again, I don't really see the need for a lot of this, but it's there and it can be useful. Okay, so what kind of products are you going to be selling? Are you going to sell physical products? In this example, yes we are. Downloads? No, we're not dealing with digital products. And then you've got some option for things like subscriptions and memberships and so on. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that these are paid for services. As you can see, they tell you how much they are per month, but you are billed annually. And these are additional plugins that you have as part of WooCommerce. So these are upsells. So bear that in mind. If you choose these, there's a cost involved. For this example, though, we don't need that. So we're just going to say continue with just our physical products, and that's fine. How many products do you want to display? Well, let's just say we're going to go between 11 and 100. Currently setting elsewhere, and we're going to say no, but if you were using other platforms and so on, you could set that information up inside here. So we're just going to say, no, we're not, that's all we want. Then it allows you to choose some other things, other places you may want to sell. So market for Facebook and things like that. We're going to disable all of these because we don't want any of those. We just want to create this for our physical online store. We'll continue on there, and then we've got, do you want to choose a theme? Now, doesn't really matter because we've already got Storefront installed, and this is installed as part of the installation setup as part of Cloudways. We're going to get rid of that later anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We'll just leave that to continue with my currently active theme. I say, do you want to enhance your store with Jetpack and WooCommerce services? Personally, I would run a mile from Jetpack, but some people do find it useful. For me, it's one of those things that I found in the past, it just slows your site down to a painful crawl. So generally, unless you need something specific out there and there's no other option for it, I would probably stay away from Jetpack. So I'm going to say no thank you very much. And we say, right, we're almost there. So we'll just continue on to this. And we have now WooCommerce database update done. So if there's any updates to be done in the background, we can let that run ahead. And then we've got some other things we can do. So you can see we can finish our setup by doing any of these following stages. How to draw attention to your online store, some help and some things like that. So quite useful for if you're new to this, but otherwise you'll probably ignore most of these things on the left-hand side and just get stuck into what you need to do on the right-hand side. Okay, so let's deal with some of these finished setup options. We're going to need to do a couple of things. I'm not going to worry about the products right now, but I do want to set up things like the tax and the shipping and so on. So let's do shipping first of all. Let's click to open this up, and now we have some basic options. We've set the store location, we know it's based in the UK, and we only want to ship to the UK. So these are things we can take into consideration when setting things up. So you can see, it gives us the ability to ship to just the country we're in, which is perfectly fine. And then you've got the rest of the world, which you can enable if you want to. And if you enable that, that will open up another set of options. For this example, though, we want to limit this to only the country we're working in. You have the option for enable shipping label printing. And this is, again, one of those things, it's a bit of an upsell. And I will show you a plugin that allows us to create our own shipping labels and invoicing and things like that, which is completely free of charge, which will allow you to easily manage that aspect. So don't worry about enabling that unless you need to. Okay, so this is shipping to the UK. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a flat rate shipping inside here. So we're going to say something like $5.95. And you can see once we do that, the free shipping disappears. So we've created a very, very basic setup for our shipping. So we'll click on proceed on there. And you can see now, do we want to enable this? We'll say no, thank you. And we've set up shipping. But don't get confused by this because there's still more things we can do with the shipping side of things. And we will jump over to that once we've gone through the payment side of things, just so I can show you how you can add and how you can customize that with a lot more ease than just going through this very simple wizard. Okay, so set up payments. We're going to click on there and we can choose what kinds of payments do you want to deal with. We've got Stripe and PayPal, which are online payment processors, both of which you can set up free accounts for, and they both take a small percentage of each transaction and a flat fee for each transaction. So check those out to see which you think is the right one for you. You can also set up cash on delivery or direct bank transfer. Whichever one you think is going to work. Now, you don't have to limit yourself to one. You can have multiple ones if you want to. But let's just say, for example, we want to have cash on delivery, so we'll enable that. And we also want to have PayPal, so we'll enable that as well. So you can see now, this says installing the WooCommerce PayPal sort of plugin, the extra extension for that. So now we've enabled the ability to take payment through PayPal. Now what we can do is we can say we can connect this. So PayPal account is required to process payments. Connect your store to your PayPal account. You'll be redirected to the PayPal website to create the connection. So what this is going to do is this is going to go through the process of linking your PayPal account when you log in to this particular site. So what you're going to need to do is click on connect, and from there that's going to open up and take you over to PayPal and allow you to either set up a new account with a new email address or to put in an email address and then log into an account you've already got set up with PayPal. Now, I'm not going to go through this because you just literally follow through this wizard to confirm everything, and then you'll be taken back to the site and you should then have payment side of things all set up. It's very similar if you wanted to connect Stripe as well. So straightforward in what you need to do. Once we've done that, we're then ready to move on to the next stage. The next thing we need to take a look at is setting up tax if you charge tax as part of your store. So what we can do is click on set up tax. We've set the store location, like I say at the beginning, and we can now configure our taxes. So we can click on there, and you see this now takes us over so we can go through the configuration process. Now, we've got a couple of things we can do inside here, and this is not going to be an exhaustive list of how to set up taxes and tax rates and so on. This is just going to show you really basically how to do something simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to set our tax rates. You can see standard rates, tax options, reduced rates, zero rate rates. There's lots of options. We're going to keep this really simple and just say insert a new row. And from there, we now need to configure a few things. The country code is going to be GB for Great Britain. The state code, you don't need to put a state code in. You can see the 2-digit state code example, leave blank to apply to all. So we know this is going to apply to all the state codes. And this is more to do with other countries like the US and Canada and so on. Then you've got your zip codes or your postcode if you're in the UK. And again, postcodes for this rule, semicolon to separate multiple. And I say you can arrange different ranges and so on. So fill out what you need inside there if you need it. We're going to keep this really simple though. We're going to say we've got GB. The rate is going to be 20%, which is currently what VAT is, and we're going to set this to be called VAT. Priority is set to 1 because we only really need to charge one tax rate inside the UK for most things. Then you've got your compound. Is this, choose whether or not this is a compound rate, and compound tax rates are applied on top of other tax rates. So if you have multiple tax rates, different countries may have multiple tax rates, you can have this applied on top as well with using compound. And then shipping is, does this apply to shipping charges as well? Is VAT or tax going to be applied to the shipping charge? Again, it's up to you. Some places you need to put that in, other places you may not need to whatsoever. So set things up the way that you want, and then we can save our changes, and we've then created our first tax rate. So that's the first thing set up alongside our payment and all those kinds of things. So we can continue setup, and now we can fill out anything else we want to do on here. We're going to say though, we've pretty much finished with everything we want, and we can now go ahead and carry on working with the store. Now, even though we've inserted some basic information for things like payments, for things like shipping and so on, and tax rates, you can still go back and make changes, add extra options in there. All you need to do is come over to WooCommerce and into the settings section, and inside there we have access to all the settings for our store. So if we want to add extra tax rates in, we can simply click on the tax tab, and again, all those options are in there. If we go to the standard rates, for example, you can see there's the tax rate that I set up originally, and we can add extra ones in. We can import CSV files, and you can also export CSV files. So if you've set up a store and you're creating another one that it just has all the same tax rates and so on, you can simply export a CSV file, import that into your new store, and save yourself a ton of time going through the process of manually recreating it. The same thing goes as well for things like shipping. So we come to the shipping section, you can see inside there we've got United Kingdom set to a flat rate, locations not covered by other zones, which you can set things up inside there. And if we click to go into this, we can easily come in and we can add anything else we want inside there. So we're keeping this really simple. But let's just say you wanted to add another region in there. Let's just say, for example, I wanted Ireland, which is just off the UK. We could say we want to sell to Ireland. So now this flat rate will apply to Ireland. We can also limit this to specific zip or postcodes. So you can build up more comprehensive shipping options. And like I say, I've got a dedicated video that will show you the 3 key stages: shipping zones, shipping options, and shipping classes. So if you want to find out more and how you can really start to hone what you can do with the shipping options, I'll drop a link to that 3-step video in the description below, so you can check that out and get yourself up to speed with more information on shipping. Now, on top of dealing with taxes and shippings and so on, it's very easy to also set up additional payment options, change payment options, and all those kinds of useful things. So all you need to do is go to the payment section, and once we go into there, you can see anything that's switched on in purple is active. So cash on delivery and PayPal checkout are both active. We can set up additional options, and you can purchase third-party plugins that allow you to link through to various different other payment methods. So if you see something that you need and it's not listed inside here, chances are it's been supported by another plugin. Some of those are official, some of those are third-party. So you have options should you need them. But for example, the PayPal checkout, if we come into manage inside there, we've got a couple of options. You can see we can enable and disable any payment method from inside this area or from the list of payment methods. We can give this a title and a description, so when the person goes through the checkout process, they can see exactly what payment method they're dealing with. So if you have multiple payment methods, this is a great way of being able to just tell people exactly what payment method is and what, for example, what cards are supported. You can switch between the live and the sandbox mode, and the live mode obviously means you're dealing with your live PayPal account, but if you wanted to work in sandbox mode, that just allows you to use demo card details, a demo account, so no real payment transactions are going to be processed, but it'll still work in a very similar fashion to the live server, so you can test things out, make sure everything in your store is working before you switch it live and start accepting real payments. You can also switch between setup or link an existing PayPal account to toggle here to go into the manual API credential input. Now, this might sound quite daunting, but if you've ever set things up with PayPal before, you may have all those details to hand, and it's going to be quicker for you to just simply go in and just put in the relevant details that are required to link it through to your PayPal account. But you can, like I say, keep it really simple and use the setup option like we saw and just go through and link that to your account or create a new account. You can also do things like use logo images, header images, and so on, so you can customize the payment checkout section and the PayPal payment section to have some branding and so on to do with your company website that you're selling through, just to give that brand recognition through the entire payment process before you're then sent back to the actual live site once the payment has been processed. So you can configure this in whatever fashion you want to. Okay, so that's how you can go in and deal with these kinds of things. And if you want a dedicated tutorial on how to set up PayPal, how to deal with all these things, let me know in the comment section below. And if enough people are interested, I'll do a dedicated video on setting up PayPal, linking it through to your WooCommerce account, and making sure that everything is configured exactly how you need it to get it fully working without any kind of hitches or problems. Let me know, like I say, in the comment section if that's of interest to you. Okay, so I said I would show you a plugin that allows you to create invoices and packaging slips without spending any money whatsoever. So let's just get that and install it so you can see how easy it is to start using that and not have to spend any money. So we're simply going to do a search for WooCommerce PDF invoices and packaging slips. And as you can see, there's over 200,000 active installs and 958 5-star reviews. So it's not something that's a shoddy comparison to the paid for version. This will give you pretty much everything most people will ever need. And as you can see, it was last updated a week ago, and it is compatible with, at the time of recording this, the latest version of WordPress, which is 5.5. So we'll just install that. Once that's installed, we can then activate it, and we then have the access to creating custom PDF invoices and packaging slips, perfect for sending out physical items to your customers. Now, once that's installed, we have a couple of settings we can go through. So let's just come into the settings section for the packaging slips. And as you can see, there is a pro version available for this, but we don't need to worry about it. And we can run through the setup wizard if we want to. So let's just say run the setup wizard, and we can now choose enter your shop name. So we're just going to give this a name, call this Wonderful Flowers. Shop address, well, we'll just say NA Cardiff. Okay, go to the next step. We can upload a logo if you want to. I'm going to ignore that for now. We're not too worried, but obviously you would upload your logo to make sure that any PDF invoices and packaging slips all have brand consistency. Go to next, and we'll say attach to. So we've got lots of different kinds of emails and things that get sent out as part of dealing with a WooCommerce store. So things like new orders, cancelled orders, and so on. So you can say attach to, select which emails you would like to attach your invoice. Now, not everything would require you to do this, but if you wanted to, you could select everything. If you didn't want to, you could just choose what you wanted. So we might say we want to put onto the new order and a cancelled order. We're not going to bother with failed order or order on hold or processing. We will with completed. We will with customer invoice and manual email, and that's it. So we're saying we only want it to be sent out and attached with these specific emails. Anything else won't have it. So we'll next on that, display options. Select some additional display options for your invoice. So you can now fine tune and configure exactly how this is going to look and what info is going to be included. So you obviously would want to put the shipping address in there. You may not want to display the email or the phone number, but we'll put things like the invoice date and the invoice number. So up to you what you want to put from those options. So select all, select none, select whichever. We'll hit next, and then we've got paper format. Now, obviously, it depends upon what country you're in, especially when it comes to printing out. So if you're in the US, you'd probably want to set this to letter format. In the UK, A4 is perfectly fine, but you do have those two options. We'll say next, and any action buttons. So would you like to display the action buttons in your WooCommerce order list? In other words, when you see the list of orders in the admin section of WordPress and WooCommerce, do you want to have the ability to print these out and so on directly from there? So I'm going to say yes, I do, because I find that quite useful. We'll hit next, and we are done. We have finished that wizard, and we'll click OK, and all those settings are now configured inside here. We also have some extra options if we want to. So we can switch this into test mode. So while test mode is enabled, any document generated will always use the latest settings rather than using the settings as configured at the time the document was first created. Pretty self-explanatory. Extended currency symbol. Enable this if your currency symbol is not displaying properly. So if you find you have an issue, you can enable that. So there's some other options inside there, including everything we've just pretty much gone through inside the wizard. So you can set things up. Once you're happy, we'll just hit save changes on there, and documents, we come over to that. You can see there's the extra options for the invoice and the same for the packaging slip. So you can just configure that the way you want. And finally, the status, and there's some extra options inside there. Okay, so we've got pretty much everything we need set up and configured, and that's pretty much good to go. So that's the next plugin. So one more plugin I want to install before we start taking a look at anything to do with designs. Okay, so let's just install that next plugin. So let's just hop over and add a new plugin. And from there, we're going to do a quick search for custom product add-ons. Now this is a free plugin again, and a very useful one. Again, 20,000 active installs with over 106 5-star ratings. So it's not something that's a little bit on the rubbish side. It's actually a very good plugin. Let's install that. And once we've installed that, we'll just activate it. And we'll take a look at how we use this when we start adding products in, which I will show you a little later in this video. As always, timestamps are in the description below for these longer videos. So if you want to jump to that point at any point in this video, by all means, feel free to do so. Okay, so we'll activate that, and that now gives us the ability to create more comprehensive products with additional information in there. Now let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about and what we'll be doing. These bouquet options, standard kinds of things, you can choose from various different options which change the price. But what we're looking for are these things like delivery dates, special instructions, and card messages. We need those to also be included in the order and have control over how we want to set these up inside our design. So that's what this plugin is going to be used for. And like I said, the free version should do everything you want for these kinds of products. Just wanted to quickly show you so you can see where we're coming from with that particular plugin. So next on our list of jobs to do is to choose the theme we're going to work with. Now, before I do this, I want to quickly say that the actual live project for the client uses Ocean WP. But because the project is probably now about 8 to 12 months old, things have moved on quite a lot with Elementor. So I'm transitioning this over to using Elementor Free and Pro alongside the Hello theme, and we're going to create the header and footer, and we're going to customize those elements, which will be different to what I use, like I say, with the client. But the main reason for this is because they've integrated the theme styles and global styling and so on. That just kind of negates a big part of the reason why I chose a theme like Ocean WP to work with, because it made the whole styling of things quicker and easier. So while this will be an exact duplicate of what the client ended up with, this is the process that I would now employ, and I do employ moving forward with any paying clients. So I just wanted to do that, say that right at this point, so you don't think if you did eventually look at the original client site and wonder why there's a different theme, this is the key reason why. Okay, so with that being said, all we're going to do is we're going to add a new theme in. We're going to do a search for the Hello theme, and we're going to just install that. So we'll install. Once that's installed, we'll activate it, and then we've got a great starting point. So we'll activate that, and we've got our starting point. Now, obviously, we need Elementor, the free version at least, and you could get away with using the free version and then using a plugin that I covered recently, which is for the headers and footers, which gives you the ability to create custom headers and footers, assign those globally, and that kind of negates a part of the reason why you may want to use something like Elementor Pro. However, we are going to use Elementor Pro in this because that's what I would generally use with a client that's paying. So let's just install the free version of Elementor, and then I'll go ahead behind the scenes and install Elementor Pro. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that this is the latest version. This is 3.01 because of the release issues that were sort of like had. But you may find some things change, some things don't work necessarily 100% because there are some issues with this first release of Elementor 3.0. Hoping that won't be the case with this particular video because everything is a clean, fresh install, basically using plugins and things that should work flawlessly with Elementor. But if there is any discrepancies, that may be the reason why. Okay, so this is where we are now. These are the plugins and the tools that we're going to be using moving forward to create this site. So the next thing we need to do is take a look at how we get together the various different assets we need to create a site for a client. Colors, graphics, all those kinds of elements. So let's take a look at that, and then we can start taking those elements and creating the styling and so on through the new features that are part of Elementor and Elementor Pro, so we can then get a consistent look and feel throughout the entire design. Now, once a client is ready to go ahead, they've paid the deposit and so on, we're ready to start working on a project, a week prior to the commencement date, I require all of the assets that I need to be able to work on and complete the project. So for this example, I've got several different assets that have either been sent over to me or given access to. So for example, if we take a look inside the branding folder, you can see there are a couple of PDFs inside there that'll have things like their logo, any packaging, all those kinds of things, different assets that I may want to utilize inside the design I'm going to work on. Also then have things like client supplied assets. Now this could be things like photographs, it could be product images, all those kinds of different things that could end up being used on the site. Now not everything that's supplied will be used, in most cases at least, but I'd rather have too many options than not enough, and then obviously I can liaise back with the client to make sure that any gaps will be filled prior to starting work. Because what I like to do is the day that I start work, I have every single asset that I need to be able to complete that entire project. Now once I start working on graphics, then I'll create another section for my edited images and maybe resized images if I'm working with just photographs. And with this particular client, I also was given access to various different photographers or wedding photographers to take a look at different portfolios or different weddings and things that they'd been given the ability to use on the site. So making sure that all copyright was cleared prior to using anything. I then got access to that to take a look at anything that I thought was going to be useful inside this particular project. Now I'm not going to show those assets because obviously there are things inside there that are wedding specific, and I don't want to step on any copyright issues with regards to that. So that's what I'll end up starting off with. Then it's a case of creating the color palette we're going to use and creating any graphics that I may think are going to be useful throughout the project. So let's just take a look first of all at what we have inside the branding section. So if we open this up, we've got lovely flowers. So we're going to open that up, and this is the artwork that's used on their jute bags. In other words, packaging. When someone walks out with flowers and so on, they may have a bag that includes this graphic, this artwork. So obviously this is important to make sure we have brand consistency. And as you can see, we've got these two colors. We've got this gray and we've got this very specific orange. And these are the colors that are used by the client for most things. I've also got things then like the flowers that are going to be used as part of it. So you can see the color's slightly different because this is something that was sent over from the illustrator that designed the logo, and they were obviously playing around with colors and so on. So I just need to make sure that everything matches the way it needs to. And then finally, we've got the logo itself. So again, you can see we've got various different aspects of this that can be used, including any potential colors and so on. But I just know, working with the client, working with the artist that did the logos and so on, this is not the final color they used, but they sent this artwork over to me anyway, so I could use it. So with those things in place, we then need to take a look at using a tool like Photoshop or Affinity Photo or Affinity Designer, any of those things that are going to open up the file formats we need to create the graphics we're going to use, as well as create that color palette. So I've gone ahead, opened Photoshop up, pulled in the graphic that I want to start working with, and as you can see, we've got a nice transparent background. So the first thing I would want to do is grab the color values that are being used, because we're going to utilize those or variations on those throughout the site. So let me just zoom in until I can get a nice close-up and we can take a look at the colors. So the first thing I want to do is just grab the eyedropper tool. We're going to sample this orange. You can see now we've got the orange sampled inside there, so we could grab this value from there and then copy that to somewhere that's going to be useful to store that information. Once we've done that one, we're going to do the same thing then for the gray that's going to be used. And we've now grabbed the two key colors that are going to be used on this site. Now, I would generally recommend that you keep to 2 to 3 colors on a site. Anything more than that can start to get a little bit messy. The same goes with things like fonts. It's always worth taking into consideration 2, maybe 3 at a push fonts. Nothing more than that, because you just lose any kind of visual reference on the site and things can start to look very amateur very quickly. So it very much is a case of less is more in most cases. And the nice thing is, with this particular client, they sent over some examples of sites that they liked, and pretty much all of them were very, very clean, very minimal, very white, which means that the colors like the orange and the gray then will stand off that nice white background and give a nice level of a contrast to what we're creating. So with those values all saved, What you can do is just simply make a note of these, or you could easily create a library color swatch, and then you'd have that shared between all of the different Photoshop and Illustrator and all those kinds of things, all the different Adobe applications. For this example, where we're just working with two, it would probably be a little overkill. So that's the first thing. We've now got those colors, so I'm going to make a note of those, and then we'll move on to the next thing I want to cover. Now, along with the colors and the different pieces of artwork and logo and so on that have been sent over, I needed to create some extra graphics. So for example, we've got this little flower emblem that's being placed in the top center. And also, if you take a look, you can just about make out a slight watermark of one of these orange flowers over on the left and right hand sides of that mock-up. And various different places on the site, you can see they're placed on the left hand side and the right hand side. So I need to create those, but the easiest thing to do is just use a tool like Photoshop when we have this image already created from the jute bag, and we can then just take the various elements of that and create something a little unique. So if we take a look, we zoom in a little bit, you can see we've got the flower symbol, and we've also got this stem with the other flower on it. But obviously it's also intermingled into everything else that we're using on here. So what I tended to do was just simply do something like grab the lasso tool or the polygonal lasso tool, depending upon what you are comfortable with. And then what I can do is I can simply make a very rough shape around the different aspects that I want. I'm not going to worry too much because I just want to show you briefly how I would do something like this. Obviously, you would spend a lot more time on this, and obviously I did spend a lot more time on this. But the nice thing is the artwork that's been supplied here is very, very high resolution. So it means that I can get in really, really close if I need to make corrections afterwards and just tidy all the artwork up. So I'm just going to roughly go around all of this, collecting just the bits that I want, just to make all the artwork nice and clean and tidy. So just bear with me. I'll speed this process up. Okay, so we've now created a selection around this. So what I can do now is I can just simply come up to Edit and Copy. Then we'll go to File and New. And from there, we're just going to create a new graphic. Now, I'm not too worried about the size of this as long as it's big enough for me to work on. So I'm going to say Create that, and then we'll just edit and we'll paste that piece of artwork inside there. So you can see we've got the basic elements. All I need to do now is zoom in and just tidy up those little bits and pieces that don't look great. So again, I'm not going to spend ages and ages and ages working on this. I just wanted to show you what I've done. So once that's done, I'll tidy all that up. I'll replicate these different sections, and I'll just focus on creating something a little unique. Once that's done, we end up with a couple of pieces of artwork. So with a little bit of time and effort, you can see this is what I've ended up with. Now I've broken this down into component parts as well. So if I want to pull any of these off to use them for other things, I can do that. So we've got the main flower in the center, and then we've got the smaller pieces to the left and the right hand side. So we can then output that as a PNG, or if you were going to use this on just a plain white background and you want to save yourself file sizes, set the size that you want, output this as either a GIF or as a 8-bit PNG, or if you want to as a JPEG, depending upon the compression and all those kinds of useful things, just so you end up then with the final pieces of the puzzle. So what I ended up with was 3 different pieces of artwork. As you can just about see, they are watermarked, so they're semi-transparent. So if you just click on there, you can see we've got a nice simple transparent layer, and then I've output those as PNGs, 24-bit PNGs, because I've got the transparency in place, and then I can utilize these 3 different graphics then on the site wherever I want to use them. That's all I've done with it. So far we've gone through, we've seen how we can grab the colors we want to use for the site, how I've then taken various different aspects of the logo and all those kinds of things to grab the different aspects, the different elements to create unique graphics that we can use as watermarks, and we can also use as a nice little sort of piece of interest, shall we say, on the actual site itself, which is something that the client wanted. Then we output those as PNG 24-bit files, and we've then got everything ready to start working. So now we can hop back over into WordPress, into our theme, set up some basic parameters for colors and so on. Then we can move on to the next stage. So one of the key new features that Elementor 3.0 and above has brought with it is the ability to set global styles, global colors, as well as earlier versions of Elementor brought with it the theme styles. So we're going to harness the use and the power of those to set up the basic things that we need for this particular website. So things like colors, fonts, and so on. Now, to do that, we have to do a couple of things first of all. We need to come into Elementor and we need to come into the settings section, and from there we need to check the box for disable default colors and disable default fonts. This just means now that we can override any of the default fonts that any theme may set up, and we can just set everything up directly inside Elementor and get full control over all those aspects of our design. We'll just save the changes on there, and now we're ready to go ahead. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of combine two separate sections. We're going to create the header section, and we're also going to set the global styles, because to get access to these global styles, we need to have some kind of file open with the Elementor editor open to be able to edit and set those styles and colors. So with that being said, let's come over into the template section, and from there we're going to come down to the theme builder. Now this is the new theme builder, so we've got a nice layout of all the key pages, and because we've got WooCommerce installed, we also see the single product and the product archive templates as well. So this is a nice easy way of making sure that we've got all the key page templates that we need for a typical WordPress website. Okay, so with that being in mind, let's jump in and go through and start creating our header. So we're just going to click to add a new header in. Once we've done that, we're going to jump over and we can take a sort of starting point if we want to from any of these designs. So we could use these to get started, or we can start completely and utterly from scratch. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to start from scratch for this example. So we're going to close this down, and you can see this brings us in now to a blank template. We've got these little blocks underneath, but you can ignore those. They're not even going to be displayed when this template file is used on our site. So don't worry too much about those things. Okay, so we've got a basic page ready now for our header. Let's just drop in some basic content, and once we've done that, we can go ahead then and set up our styling. Now, there are three key elements to our header. We've got the top section that has the phone number and social icons. We have a logo section below that, and finally, we have the menu structure. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about making sure everything is perfect at this point. We can tweak that later. We're more interested in getting the basics in there so we can then go ahead and configure our styling. What we're going to do, first of all, is just drop in a 50-50 column. Once we know, 50-50 row, I should say. So once we've done that, that's going to be where we're going to drop in our telephone number on the left, and we're going to put our social icons on the right. Next up, we're going to add another section in, and this is going to be a single row column. And inside there, we're going to drop in our logo. And finally, underneath that, we're going to do the same thing again. We're just going to add in another single row column. So this is going to be the three areas we're going to use. So first of all, let's just click this middle one. And from there, we're just going to come over to our widgets, and we're going to grab the site logo. Now you're seeing these various different icons at the top, primarily because we are working with a header and a template for a header. So it knows we're going to probably want to use these particular widgets. And it's pretty much right. So I'm going to drag and drop that into the center section. Now currently I don't have a logo set up inside here, so I can set that up in a moment. So don't worry too much about that. Next up, we're going to come underneath, we're going to drop in our menu structure. So we're going to come back in, choose our nav menu, drop that underneath there. You can see that drops it in as we want. We can again configure all the different aspects. So I want this to be centered, so that's going to be great inside there. And at the top, we're just going to come back over, and from there, we're just going to put in a heading or text. It's up to you which way you want to go with this. I'm going to put a heading in there to give it a level of importance. I'm going to set that to H6, and then make sure that's aligned to the left. And then on the opposite side, we're going to come in and we're going to just do social icons. So what we can do is we can grab those icons, we can drag and drop those up to the top corner. And as you can see, they look pretty ugly at this point in time. And that's perfectly fine. We can style those in a moment. I'm going to set those to the right-hand side as well. So we've created the basics. Let's just publish this now, so when we jump over and take a look at setting up our styling, we're not going to lose anything accidentally. So we'll hit publish, and because this is a template file, we now just need to give it a condition for where this is going to be used throughout our entire site. We'll add a condition, entire site is perfectly fine, hit save and close, and that's now the header that's going to be used on our entire site. Now, one of the big advantages of Elementor 3.0 and above is the ability to set up various different parameters, things like logos and stuff like that, without having to round trip out of the editor. We can do all this inside the section, go to the top left-hand corner, and we've got site settings. If we click in there, you can see we've got our global colors and so on, but we've also got site identity. Click on site identity and you can see we can change the name, the description we want to use, and also the site logo and any kind of site favicon you may want to use. We'll choose site logo. I've already uploaded the image that I want to use, which is the logo in this example, and we'll insert that media, and we're going to let that just load in, and we'll update that. Now, you may take a little bit of time to see this. Again, it's one of those things that sometimes you do get these little quirks when you work with Elementor, but don't worry too much about that. Let's just go back to our editor, and there we go. We can see that logo has actually gone in there as we wanted it to. So now with that inserted in there, we can make any changes we want to this. So let's just select it, come to the styles option, and from there we can just tweak the size of this. So we can set our height, our max width, and so on. So we can say we want to set a maximum width on there, and we could say, again, this is working on a percentage, but you can work on pixel values or VW values. So we'll just set this to pixel value for this example. I'm going to set this to about 180, somewhere around there. That looks perfectly fine for me. Okay, so that's the logo setup. It's already set up and configured to go back to the main site URL. So it's going to work pretty much exactly the same as you'd expect for any kind of logo as part of a site. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's just come back in and we're going to go back into our site settings. And from there, we can now set up the key things we want, like typography, colors, and so on. So global colors is the first thing we're going to configure. So we're going to come into there and you can see we start off with 6 global colors. Now, obviously, these are not the colors that we want to use. We've already defined at least 2 basic colors when we went through the graphics section. So we've got the gray color we want to use in various places and also the orange color that's going to be used. But we may need to add some extra colors in. So you can see the logo has a slightly different orange to when we was using earlier on, so do the graphics. So we've got a couple of colors that we can save out quite easily, and then we can apply these any way we want inside the global colors. So we're going to do that next. Now, the great thing about these global colors is we can replace them very easily. We can also create as many as we want. Now, like I said earlier on, we do want to make sure that we keep the amount of colors that you use to just a couple, 2 to 3. You can use various different shades of the same color to complement and highlight different areas, things like rollovers and stuff like that. But generally, 2 to 3 colors is going to be more than enough. And if you're dealing with very strong colors, if you start to put too many in there, everything just looks unprofessional and very much of a mishmash. Anyway, let's just change this primary color. So we're going to click on the little color chip, and what we're going to do is we're going to change this value underneath to the color that we want, which is the orange color. So you can see that now changes that primary color. And if we want to, we can rename that to something else. So we can just say primary orange. And then what we can do is, for example, the accent color, we can just click on that and we can change that to the lighter orange color that I want to use for some of the different areas throughout the site. So we're going to click, change that value over there. And again, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to change this to accent orange. We've then got the darker gray color we want to work with, which is going to be used in various parts of the site. So we're not going to set that to text or secondary. We're going to set this to a gray color. So we're going to change this heading gray, for example, and we're just going to change that and drop that color in there. Now, heading gray is a perfectly fine name for that. That works exactly as I want it to. So we've set up the basic colors now that we can use on the site, and we can start to reference those. If we want to come in at any point and change these, we can do that. If you want to edit them, you can edit them in various different ways. And you may well see that as we go through and make changes and edits to various different components and colors and things. So I'm going to come back out of this, and we're going to go this time into global fonts. Now, global fonts works in very much the same way. You've got your primary, your secondary, your text, and your accent fonts, but you can add extra font styles in. So you may have specific styles that you want to use for subheadings or special call to actions that are not referenced all over the site. Well, you can set things up inside here to do just that. Now, for now, we're going to leave that as it is. I'm not going to make any changes in there right now. I may come back and change them later on or add extra ones in there, but for now, we're going to leave them as they are. We're going to come back into this though, and you can see we now have theme styles as the next block down. So this is where we're going to style the various different elements, or the basic elements at least, for the theme that we're building. So the first thing we're going to do is come into typography. And from there, you can see we can set up various different values. We've got text, which is going to be the body text. We've also got typography. You'll also see that we get this little globe icon next to color chips and the edit icon and so on. Now, global is basically saying you're going to reference one of those global fonts or global colors. So bearing that in mind, if we come into the text color, for example, so for our main body content, we click on that little color chip. We can set our color directly inside there if we want to, but to make things easier, we can use the little globe icon and we can then reference any of the global colors or the global fonts we've set up. So let me just show you what I mean. If I click on default, you can see there's our primary orange, our secondary, our text, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be our text color. And that means now all of our text colors, unless anything else defined on links H1 through H6 and so on, is going to take on that dark gray color. The beauty of this though is if we wanted to change that and tweak it, we could easily come back out of this, go back into our global colors and edit that text color. So we click on there, and let's just make it just a little darker. So let's just go down to black just so you can see. And you can see if you take a look at where it says Elementor header 30, as I make that change, you can see those colors are changing on there, and the same with the heading at the top. So we can easily fine tune and tweak these colors using the global options, which makes the whole process really super easy. So what I'm going to do, come back out of this, go back to our global fonts again. From there, we're going to set up some basic parameters. The primary we're going to set for our body text, and the secondary we're going to set for our headings. So let's start by renaming the primary, and we're going to call that body text so it makes sense to us when we're selecting it. Then we'll click to start editing this. So the font family we're going to choose for this, for all our body text, is going to be Laura. I'm going to select that from there, and once we've done that, we can set the basic size, and we can use pixels, Ms, rems, VWs, whatever you kind of want to use. For simplicity, I'm going to keep this to pixel value, because to work with Ms and rems, I think I need to give you a more sort of solid grounding in how these different units of measurement actually affect your design. And again, if this is something that you think you'd like to find out more about, the difference between Ms and rems and how to use them with scalable designs, let me know in the comment section below. I can take a look at creating some content on that. Okay, so what we're going to do is set this to a pixel value, and we're going to set this just the basics, because this is going to be primarily the unit that's going to be used for our body text. So we're going to set that to a value of about 16 pixels, which is generally around the accepted kind of size, depending upon the font that you're using. Weight, we're going to set this to 400, bearing in mind that not every font you may choose may not have all these weights available. Other than that, we're just going to set some other simple things up. We're going to set the line height. We're going to set this to a pixel value again and set that to about 26. You can adjust this on a widget level if you want to, or you can come back in and edit this if you find it's a little bit too large, too small, whatever you kind of think. You can easily fine tune these values. Next up, we're going to do our heading basics. So we're going to call this headings. We'll do the same again. We're going to click to start editing, and this time we're going to change this over to Montserrat. Select that from there, choose pixel value. Now this is going to be the basis for our headings. Now you can change this, and we will change this on the theme style level, but it makes life easier if we at least set some very basic parameters. That could be size, but as a bare minimum, I would say you want to set the font family that's going to be used and potentially the weight that you may want to use. So we're going to keep it really, really simple and straightforward. We're going to set a starting value in pixels of about 36. And we're going to set a weight to 500. So all our headings will take on a decent kind of size. Other than that, I'm going to leave that as it is. I may need to come back and tweak it later, but for now, that's perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to hit update on there to commit those changes, and we can now start to reference those inside our theme style. So now we can come back out of the site settings, and this time go into the typography options, and this is where we can now start configuring things. Now you've already seen how easy it is to set the colors. Works pretty much exactly the same with the fonts. All we need to do is click on this typography and click on the little default, the little globe icon, and we can change that then to body text. We'll change that, and you see now everything picks up that styling. Obviously we don't want this to apply to the headers, so we can change the headers independently. So let's just say, for example, the first one is going to be the H1. We'll do the same again. We'll select the little global option and we'll choose headings. And you see the headings now are replaced, picking up the basic styling that we set up. We can now override any aspect of that we want to. So we could change the colors on different heading sizes. We can change the weight. We can set things to uppercase, lowercase, all these kinds of useful things. But we can also, like I say, adjust things on a widget level if we want to, and we will take a look at that later on down the line. However, let's just come into the typography setting now for our H1 and just tweak this global setting to make it specific to the heading 1. Click on the edit icon, and what we can do now is we can adjust the aspects inside there. 36 is okay, I think. What we'll do is we'll change the transform to uppercase. That looks quite good, and we're going to adjust the letter spacing a little bit. We're going to set that to something like 1.6, just to give us a little bit of breathing room between each of the letters. And I'm going to tweak the size of this just a little over what we had. So that looks pretty good to me. We can just then come down from there, and we can do the same then to the heading 2. Now, we don't have any heading 2 available on here, so we're kind of working, we're just eyeballing it kind of thing. What we can do is we can come in, we can say we're happy with all those values. 32 is fine on there. Uppercase, we can set that if we want to, and any other parameters we want. So we're just going to set the line spacing again, or the letter spacing, to 1.6 again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing on the H3. We're going to come down to that, and we're just going to quickly change. Let's just make sure that that's using our global headings. We'll come into our typography, and we'll just adjust. So we don't want 36 on this. Set that to about 30. Set that down to 300. We'll transform that to uppercase and set the letter space into 1.6 again. So I'm going to leave those there for that section. So now you could go ahead, set up any of the parameters for all of your other fonts and everything else inside there. If we come back out of this, you can do the same for your buttons, your images, your form fields, and so on. You have full control. It all uses exactly the same options. You can use those global options if you want to, and you can also configure various different aspects of it. And that will easily allow you to globally set the various different things that you want. But we've put the basics in, and that's enough for us to get started. So I'm going to leave that where it is now, and we probably will hop back and forth through this. But working with the client, once you've kind of set up the basics and you've got all those font stylings and things like that in there, you'll generally leave that as it is, and that'll be the global settings for pretty much all the key aspects of your site. So what we need to do now is just simply update that to commit any of the changes that we've made, and we can now come back out of this and go back in and start editing our header section and fine-tuning and getting exactly what we want there. So let's go ahead and do just that. Now, I'm not going to make this a 10-hour tutorial showing you every single thing I do. I'm just going to show you the key things. So I'll show you how we can tweak this header now and how we can set things up on a widget level as opposed to a global level. But I'm then going to kind of assume that you're happy dealing with some of these aspects to create things like your footers, because it's pretty much exactly the same as creating your header, just you assign the footer template to it and set everything up inside there. So just quickly take a look at how we can configure this to get it closer to what I want. Let's start off with the navigation. We're going to select the navigation option, and from there we're going to come over into our styling, and we're just going to tweak a few things on here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is change the font that's being used. I could, if I wanted to, reference the global styles we've set up, but for this example, I'm going to keep it really simple, and we're just going to come in and we're going to change it on a widget level because this only appears in one template. Don't really need to create a global style specifically for that, but you could if you wanted to. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to set this to be Montserrat, and once we've done that, we're going to set the size. We're going to set this to probably about 18 pixels, something like that, and we're going to set this to be 300, maybe 400, and we'll adjust it to uppercase, and we'll adjust the letter spacing out to 1.6. Actually, let's bring this down to about 16. That looks pretty good. Actually, maybe a little smaller than that. That looks great. Okay, so we're going to go with 15 on there. Next up, we can adjust other things like the hover state and so on. So what I want to do first of all is change the text color on this. We are going to use one of those global colors. We're going to set this to be the text color. You can see that now immediately picks that color up for us. What we're going to do then is jump over to the hover set, and we're going to just change the text color on there, and we're just going to choose this global colors, and we're going to choose our primary orange. So now when we mouse over, we get the orange highlight. Now I don't want this underline on there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that, and that is super easy on here. We're just going to come over to the content section, and what we can do is we can just change the actual pointer. I'm going to change our underline to none, and now we just get this hover effect. Come back to our styles, go to active, and we're going to do inside there, we're going to change that to one of our global colors, and we're going to set that to our accent color. So now whichever one is active will be highlighted in that nice orange color. Really, really, really easy. Okay, so that's the menu section set up. Let's come up to this top section now. Let's just select this, and we're going to just tweak the layout a second to make sure that we've got the vertical align and everything set up. We want that to be middle on there. We're going to set the height on this, and we're going to set a minimum height, and we're going to set that to something quite small because we only want this to be a little strip at the top. 20 is okay for the moment. We just need to adjust the size of these icons for our socials. So that's really simple. We'll just select them, and we're going to come over to our styling option, adjust our size on there until we get to something quite small, maybe somewhere around 14. somewhere around there. We'll try that out a second. What we're going to do is adjust the color schemes on this so we can set our primaries and our secondary colors. We're not going to set these based upon global colors. We're going to set them based upon our unique colors. So you can see that is the background color, which we're going to set to be white in this example. And we're going to change the secondary color. And we're going to set those. Actually, we're going to use a global color on there. We're going to use this heading gray. And you see that now creates these nice sort of icons in the top corner. So we can just adjust anything like spacing and so on in there till we get exactly what we want. I'm going to come to the icon hover and we're going to just change this now as well. So we can change it so we can adjust the secondary color, which we know is going to be the actual icon itself. We're going to click on the global color and we're going to set our accent orange. Now when we mouse over, we get the orange effect. So pretty cool. If you want to, you can apply animations and so on to this. You can get creative as you want on there. There we go. So I'm going to select this section now one more time, and we're going to just come down to our style section, come to border, and we're going to set a border at the bottom. So we're going to say border solid and link these. On the bottom, we're going to set 1 pixel, and we're going to set our color inside there, and we're going to set that to our pale gray. So we should now have a very, very small gradient, very small line on there. Now I'm going to keep on tweaking this to get exactly what I want, just to fine tune it to get exactly where I need it to be. But that's pretty much all we need to do. Just hit update when we're finished, and that's our header section created. Now that we've laid the groundwork, we're ready to move on to the more fun stuff, which is creating the pages we want to work with. We're going to start off with the home page. Now, as I've said with the header and footer and so on, I'm not going to do every single thing for this. I'm just going to give you a flavor for how I would tend to work. So don't think this is going to be an exhaustive review on every single page, because that would just be overkill. Okay, so let's just add our new page, and we're just going to call this home page, and we're going to start using Elementor to build this out. So we'll just save this to draft. Doesn't really matter if you save it to draft or publish it. The site's not live anyway. Okay, so once we've done that, we can now edit this with Elementor, and we can start building our page out. Knowing that the header and footers have already been set up, we're now just going to create the content in between. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this really ugly header section at the top. So we're going to come to our settings, and from there, we're going to hide that title. So you can see I've created my footer at the bottom. The header's all in place. We're going to need to set up a menu structure that's proper later on, but for now, that's perfectly fine what's there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start building this page out. Now, the first thing is we're going to have some kind of header section going on at the top that has a nice image, or if you want to, depend upon your client, depend upon your requirements, you may want to have a couple of images and transition between them, just bearing in mind that will potentially increase the load time on every single page. So for this example, we're going to keep it really simple and just have one image that's going to be a nice striking word image, which is kind of key for what this site is all about. So we're going to add in a new section, 1 row, 1 column, and from there, we're just going to simply add in the graphic and so on that we want to use. Now to do this, we've got a couple of ways we could work. We could drop an image in there if we wanted to, and that's one way of working. But for this example, I just want to use it as a background because at a later date, I may want to put text over this, various different reasons. But for now, we're just going to select this, make sure it's active, and we're going to jump over to our styles section. From there, we're going to set our background. We're going to select classic, and then we're going to just choose an image. Now, I've already gone ahead and uploaded a couple of images for this, which have already been optimized and sized. So we're going to select that image, insert that in there, and as you can see, that looks terrible. Reason is we haven't configured it yet. So the first thing I want to do is set the position, the height, and all those kinds of useful bits of information. So let's come back over to our layout section, and from there, we're just going to set this up to the way that we want. We're going to say that we want to have this with no gaps. We want to set a height to be a minimum height, and from there we're going to set exactly what the minimum height is going to be, and we're going to just scroll this up, and I'm going to set this to about 800. Now obviously this is going to work great on a desktop, but not so well on a mobile or a tablet, so we can adjust and configure that very easily. Now we can see immediately this doesn't look quite right because the image is all squished over and we're not centered, we're not seeing the entire image. So we're going to need to deal with a couple of things on here as well. What we need to do, though, is come back over to our style section, and from there we can control the position and the way this image is going to be displayed. So the position, we're going to set this to be center center because then the focus is on the bride and the groom, which obviously is what we want to do, and the bouquet of flowers, since this is a florist site. We can set up the attachment, we can set all those kinds of things. So we're going to keep this really, really simple. We're going to say the attachment is left at default. Repeat, we don't want this to repeat. So we say no repeat on there. And then the size, this is where we can kind of control exactly how this image is going to be displayed. And we're just going to say we want to set this to cover. So now if we increase or decrease the size of the page on different devices, this will scale accordingly. With that being said, we need to now just check how this is going to look on a mobile and on a tablet. To do that, all we need to do is come down to responsive mode, switch mode to tablet. And as you can see, it looks okay, but not necessarily that good because we're kind of losing the sense of what's going on. So what we need to do is come back to our layout and we're going to adjust our minimum height again. So we're going to adjust this until it looks good. Somewhere around about there, it looks pretty cool. We don't need to set any of the column positions. We can leave all that as it is. And we're going to do the same again then just for mobile. And as you can see, that now inherits the sizing from our tablet view. And that's kind of what happens. It cascades down. Your desktop is going to be the initial setting. And if you change nothing, then the desktop and the tablet and the mobile are all going to look the same. If you keep the desktop and you change the tablet and the mobile will stay the same. It flows down like a waterfall from desktop through tablet to mobile. Okay, so we just need to do the same again, adjust this minimum height until it looks good on a mobile phone. About 170 seems to work pretty nicely on there. And we've set everything up on there now for this hero section to work perfectly fine across all key devices. Switch back over to our desktop now and carry on working. So the next thing I want to do is put a section underneath that drops in that nice little graphic that I showed you that I created earlier on from the various different aspects of the packaging. And we're going to set that, we're going to animate it, and we're going to drop this into this top section and create something that says exactly what this particular business is all about. And it's an award-winning florist, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to add another section in, and we're going to set this to be 1 column, 1 row again. And from there, we can now set up the different parameters we want to work with. First of all, let's set the color. So we're just going to make sure it's selected, come to our style, and from there, we're going to set our background again, but this time we're going to choose a color. We're going to use our global colors option. So we're going to click on there, and we're going to just choose this pale gray BG, which is for our background. So it's a really subtle look, but it does give a little bit of visual separation between the various different elements. So next of all, we need to drop in the graphic we want. So we're going to come back over, grab our widgets for our graphic, drag and drop that into our design. Then we're just going to choose the design element that we want, which is going to be this floral design. And we're going to insert that media, and you can see that now displays the way we want. We need to give this a bit of breathing room though, because if you've ever seen any of my other design tutorials, I like plenty of white space to make sure that all the different elements breathe and we don't cause confusion by just squishing everything up together. So all I'm going to do is come onto my advanced section, and from there we're just going to tweak the padding. So we're going to unlink those so we can set them independently and set the top to 50 pixels and the bottom to 20 pixels because we're going to drop in some additional information underneath that. So the final thing I want to do with this now is just to create some kind of motion on there. So we're going to come to our motion effects option, and from there we're going to change the entrance animation and set that to be fade in, and we're going to leave the animation duration to normal. So this will now just fade in just to give a little sense of motion, and what that should help do is just draw attention then to the award-winning florist heading that we're going to place underneath this. So what we're going to do, drag and drop a heading inside there, and you can see that picks up our styling from the heading 2, which is perfectly fine. And heading 2 is again perfectly fine for this example because this would probably be the second level of importance on the page. And we're just going to put in the text I want to use, which is going to be award-winning florist. We'll align this to the center, and we'll just tweak this a little bit because it's not standing out as much as I would like. So let's just change this to H1 because we don't have any H1s on the page anyway. So we're not going to have a conflict between the sort of hierarchy of our content. So that's perfectly fine. Then we're going to drop in another section underneath. Up to you, you could use heading or text. It's entirely up to you, depending upon what you want to do and the level of importance you want to apply to it. For this example, we're going to drop in this text block. And we're simply going to take a little bit of text that I want to use on here, which is all about the award-winning florists. I'm going to drop that into there, making sure that it hasn't taken any extra junk over with it. And now we can just quickly tweak this. So we can come up with things like style, set the alignment on there, and we can adjust the font weight and so on. Because this is simply using the body, we want to give it a little bit more visual weight. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come into our typography, and we're just going to bump the size of this up until we get just a little bit more weight to it. So about 18 pixels should do that quite nicely. And again, you might need to adjust the spacing between some of these elements just to make sure that everything has plenty of breathing space. but that looks pretty good. The only thing I want to do now is put an effect at the bottom of this section. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure the section is selected. And once the section is selected, we're going to just come over and choose the shape divider under the style tab. From there, we're going to set this to bottom. And we're just going to make sure that we set the shape divider that we want to use, which in this example is the sort of waves brush to give it a sort of rustic edge to it. So let's just choose that. And as you can see, that looks okay, but there's a couple of issues with this. The first is it's kind of cutting into our text, which isn't the effect that I want. So we can easily adjust that. Making sure we've got it selected, we're going to adjust the height on there, and you can see that will adjust the amount of kind of curve or wave we get to it. So we're going to set that to about 26, 27. We'll flip it the opposite way, and now we just need to give this a bit of breathing room. And to do that, we just come over to the Advanced tab, making sure that we've got the section selected. And from there, we're going to come down to our padding, unlink these, and set the bottom to 50 pixels. Now we get this nice little painted wave effect with the animation of the flowers and drawing attention to this particular section on the page. So that's the first part done. So we've got the first couple of sections. We now need to go on and just give a little bit more information about the services, the person behind it, and some different things like I like to put in testimonials because they can add a little bit of weight to what it is you're saying, what you're talking about, and so on, and adds a little bit of extra weight to your service. Now, I'm not going to bore you by making you sit through and watch me do all of this, so I'm going to quickly go ahead, put the rest of this page together and publish it, and then we can move on to the next stage. Okay, so let me just quickly run through what I've done. You've seen the first two sections. All I've done now is go through and configure a few other sections on here. Got the 2 columns, single columns. We've dropped in various different call to actions just to get this nice little bit of animation, and then link those through to what pages would be for weddings, flower school, and an online shop. I've dropped in a section then where we can put testimonials. Obviously, you'd put real testimonials from real photos, but this is just a demonstration. I've also inserted that watermark in the background, and if you don't know how to do these watermarks, all you need to do is select the section you want, come over to the Style tab, come over to Background Overlay, set your image inside there, and then you can adjust the opacity on that to make it even more of a watermark if you want to, or stronger if you want to. And again, you same as with all the images you can set as background and so on. You can adjust the position, the repeat, all those kinds of useful pieces of information. And finally, at the bottom then, I've dropped in this Our Favorite Bouquets section. Now, even though I've just pulled in random data for this, the principle is very, very simple. You would just literally come in, set up your different products, and then you can drop this section in, which is literally just an edit product section, or a product section, I should say. And if you come to the query, you can set the source to be anything from current query, latest products, sale, featured, and manual selection. So I've set these to be featured, and then they've just been set as a featured product inside WooCommerce itself. Nothing particularly complex inside there. And if you're not too sure how to set a product as a featured product, let me just come out of this because I've finished this homepage now. I'm going to exit to our dashboard, and from there we're going to come back out of this, go into WooCommerce products, show all products, and then all you need to do, where you see this little star, you just simply click on that, and that will set it as a featured product. It's a great way of selecting products to be featured on various different pages and sections of your site. Really easy, but really quite useful. Okay, so the final thing I want to do now is just set that as my home page, and to do that we're simply going to come into the settings section, and from there we're going to come into reading, and then we're going to change this to a static page and set this to our new home page and save our changes. And that's our home page set up for us. Before I wrap this section up, let's just quickly take a look at what I've done so far. So I'll refresh this page so we've got the most up-to-date version. You can see there's a header section. We've got our logo in there, which click back to the main page. We can jump between our home page, shop, my account, checkout, and so on. We scroll down. You can see there's our little fade in to give this a little bit of animation, a bit of interest. There's our sections. All the information's inside here. We can move over any of these. It'll give a little bit of motion inside there. Come down. There's our testimonials, and then there's our favorite. And you can see there's our footer. So we've basically set up the home page, the header, and the footer, the key things that we need to do. Once we've set that up now, the next thing I want to quickly run through is just showing you how easy it is to set up your shop homepage design and how we can do that. Now, when you're building an e-commerce store and you're doing it where you're creating the designs and so on through Elementor, You may be tempted to try to edit the shop page and be able to use that with Elementor. Well, let's just take a look at what happens if we try that. I'm going to say edit with Elementor. And once we do that, it's going to try to load the editor in and it says, unfortunately, the content isn't found on this particular page. And that's because WooCommerce is kind of telling WordPress what page is going to be used for the normal shop page, and then Elementor can't find what it needs on there. So we need to find a way around that, and it's fairly straightforward. Let's just go back out of this and forget all about the shop page for now. What we're going to do is we're going to come into the template section and into our theme builder one more time. We're going to click to add new, and from there we're going to just choose a product archive. So we'll choose product archive, let that basically load in, and then we can choose one of the predefined layouts if we want to and use this as a starting point. And for ease, we'll do just that. We're going to just pick this at first option. So we'll say we want to insert this into our page. Once it load in, and you can see everything is now loaded in for us. So we've created what looks like our products page. So we're going to change this title, and we're just going to just put in there. We're going to just change that, delete it completely. Just get rid of that, and we're just going to put a new title inside there, and we're just going to put in title heading, drop that at the top, and we're just going to call this Flower Shop. There we go. So we've got that set up. We'll just put a little bit of spacing underneath that just to give it a bit of breathing space. 20 pixels should be perfectly fine. So you can see now what we've got is we've got a grid of X number of products being displayed, and we can fine tune and configure exactly what's been displayed here. This is all going to work. So we'll select the archive, and you can see it tells us to change the product archive layout, go to the appearance and customize. So you kind of have to use the customizer, but we've put the basics in there, and we can still do things like edit some of the styling on this, so we can adjust the column gap if we wanted to bring those a little closer to each other, just the row gap. You can do other things, and of course you can still tie this into any of the global styling you set up through your theme styles and so on. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think I'm just going to be reiterating what you probably already know and what you've seen me do in the first part. But what I wanted to do is just set the basics of this up. We'll click on publish, and then we can add a condition like we did with the header and footer. And this is the useful part of it. We'll click on add condition. You can see it says all product archives. Now you could leave it at that if you wanted to, but for this example, we want to set this to be the shop page. Now you could add extra fields into this as well if you wanted. So you could just say we want to add another condition. So we'll say add a second condition, and you say all archive pages, or you can say product categories, whatever you kind of want to do. So let's just say we'll put that as product categories, for example, and all product categories. Hit save and close. We've now set up our own custom shop page. Now, obviously, I would spend a little time making sure everything was consistent with the fonts, the styling, and the colors, and so on. But I think you kind of get the idea of this all works. Now, if you want to make some changes to this, what we can do is we can exit out of this to our dashboard, and we can go to our theme. So if we come into our appearance and into customize, that'll open up the customizer. And even though we're using the hello theme, which is really just a bare bones theme, you can see we do have a WooCommerce section. So we should find if we switch over to the shop page, we can at least control some of the basic parameters for this. So we come to WooCommerce, you can see we can apply store notices, the product catalog. We can do things like, do we want to show products, categories and products, how many products per row, how many rows per page. You can configure these various different things, including things like the product image. So you can fine tune and configure this to get exactly what you want, including the scaling and the sizing of the images and so on. Like I say, I just wanted to show you how to get over that very common hurdle that a lot of people question about, well, what happens with the shop page, the old shop page and so on. This is the easiest way to override that using Elementor Pro's theme features. So we're going to come back out of this, and we are pretty much done with the shop side of things. And the same goes then, what we can do is we can come back into our theme builder, and this time we're just going to add one more template, and I'm just going to do this really, really quickly. Again, you can totally customize this if you want to. We're going to go to single product, and from there, we're simply going to choose either a design or start completely fresh. For this example, let's just simply choose a design. So we've got a page created, and we can see exactly how that works. There we go. That's our page created. Again, I would go through and fine tune and configure this using the techniques that I've already shown you how to do. We'll click on publish, and all we need to do now is add our condition for this, and you can see it pulls this up as products, but again, you can fine tune this if you need to other different sections. So you could create multiple different single product templates, and you could assign different layouts to different products or categories, child categories, tags, authors, and all those kinds of incredibly useful things. For this example, we're leaving it set to products so it becomes the default template for all our products. We'll save and close that down and we are effectively done. Let's just jump over to our test page and you can see we're on the home page and everything is looking nice and neat and tidy. If we go to the shop page, we're now redirected to our custom shop page, which is exactly what we wanted. And if we come and take a look at any of these products, we can click to go in and there's our custom page for our product. Now, obviously, this does need some work to make sure it falls in line with the whole design of the client's website. But you kind of get the understanding of what it is that I'm putting together. Now, before we move on to configuring various different aspects of our shop, there's something I want to show you that I've started using. And while I didn't use this at the time of working with this original client, I am using it now for personal projects and client projects because it helps no end when I'm looking to make sure that any design I put together, or if I've got a client that questions the design decisions, I can go in with some valuable data to help them realize that there are better ways of achieving certain things. So, what exactly am I talking about? Well, this is an application called Attention Insight, and this uses artificial intelligence to take a look at a design, and this could be a website, a landing page, it can be advertising material, it can be a range of different things, and it will look using that AI and through tried and tested information about all manner of different tests, how well a particular design will fare based upon things like heat maps and different aspects of it. In other words, is your design going to do its job? So let me just show you how this works, and I'll explain to you why I've started using this in a moment. So I'm just going to log in. Once I've logged in, I can just simply grab the URL for my design. So I'm going to come back over, I'm going to grab that Cloudways temporary URL, doesn't really matter. And you're not really stuck to only using these URLs. You can upload images and you can also upload comparison images. And if you're uploading images as opposed to linking it through to a site, you can very easily upload 30 images and do comparisons between all the different aspects. So if you were testing designs out amongst various different home pages, landing pages, and so on, this tool could be incredibly invaluable to see which is potentially going to perform the best out of all the designs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this really, really simple and just show you how I would use this for a client's website, just to show you how we can test to see where the end user is going to look and how people are going to interact with it. And then I can adjust if I need to moving forward. We've got the design type, and we can choose between desktop, marketing, material, and mobile. Now, mobile, obviously, people would use that in a different way, and therefore smaller screen, different way that people are going to interact with it, different information people are going to look at first, second, last, and so on. Then you can choose what's the website type. So for this example, it's an e-commerce site. So we could say e-commerce, but we're going to test just the home page at this point. So that's not really specifically e-commerce. It has some e-commerce facilities in it. But if I wanted to test out the e-commerce page, which I would do, I would then also choose the e-commerce and just check that out as well. So we set this to landing, and we're just going to call this florist site. So what we need to do now is just drop in the URL for that, and we're just going to say capture. And this is going to go away now and screen grab the entire page for us in multiple different sections. And then it's going to look through each of those different sections and create a heat map and a feedback sort of area to allow us to see where people are going to click on, what they're going to look at, and how we can draw attention to the things that we as designers and clients as paid customers really want to get the focus on. Okay, so you can see now on the right hand side it says there's my uploaded files. I've only got one. So what I could do is just grab that URL as well for the shop page, and we'll do the same thing again there. So we'll just drop that into there and we'll just capture that as well, and we'll let that go ahead. Now while we're waiting for that to go ahead, I just want to quickly say you're not limited to just using it in this way where you just put a link in. You can upload files to this. You can also use it with Sketch. You can use it with Adobe XD. You can use it on, I think, a mobile device. You have a Chrome extension that allows you to just capture a page, any page that you want. The good thing about this is you can use this not only for your clients and for the work you may be doing, but you could also take a look at competitor websites and see what's working really well for them, and then use that in your designs or your clients' designs to focus the attention, and ultimately create a better experience that converts better based upon information you can grab from their competitors or your competitors. So with that being said, let's just analyze this now. So we're going to analyze these 2 pages. This could take a couple of minutes, so I may pause the video and come back when we've all finished. That's gone ahead and finished everything. And as you can see now down the left-hand side, I'm going to link to all the pages that is pulled in from what we just set up link-wise. And we have 2 options, attention heat map and percentage of attention. So what we're effectively looking at is the red areas are where the eyes will be drawn to first. The colors that go out from that right the way to blue being something that generally doesn't grab the attention in the slightest. So depending upon the kind of design that you create and the kind of things that you want to focus people's attention on, you could use this tool to just refine that design to see exactly what people are going to look at. You can then take a look at things like your clarity score. And your clarity score is basically how clear the interface is for new users. So something that's nice and clean and simple with obvious calls to action, that's going to score pretty highly on the clarity score. Something that has lots and lots of busy things going on and lots of colors and lots of things just grabbing your attention, you're going to have quite a low clarity score. So optimally, you want to get that as high as is humanly possible. And next up, you've got your Alexa site rank. So say your website is compared to the top 170 Alexa sites in landing page category and give you a score. So you can see this is in the upper percentage. So we are in the 17% of companies and a clarity group of 70 to 80. So we're scoring pretty good on there. There's still room for a little improvement, obviously, but it's still good to see. Now you can disable any of these options if you want to, and then you can just refine. So at the moment, there's nothing there for your percentage of attention, but what you can do is you can draw shapes around what you want people to draw attention, and you can calculate the attention on there. So we can just say test, and then it say calculate the attention, and then it's going to go ahead and calculate what it thinks is going to be attention grabbing and give you a score based upon it. So that again can be quite useful if you've got certain things that you want to see. Is the visual hierarchy on this call to action, is it working? Well, you can use a tool like that to compare it. So put that back on, and then you can just simply go through the various different aspects of your site. So you can see that this text block has 12% of interest being sort of grabbed into it. So that will take 12% of the attention, whereas obviously the logo animating in would take up a little bit more. So you may say, well, that's not the way we want it. We want to boost that particular section. Well, there you go. You've got that tool there to ultimately help you do just that. Now, if we hop over to the eCommerce page, we can take a little look on this. Let's go to the top of this page. So we can see what's grabbing the attention the most. And you can see the products not so much so, and the chances are it's because they all look very similar on this particular setup. Now I've just dropped in images that they supply from old product stock, so that's not necessarily doing the best job for them there. They could possibly do something just a little bit more vibrant to grab attention with the key things that they want to draw attention to. But you can see how useful this is. And just to back up what I'm talking about, where we've got this bunch of roses, and if we just take this heat map off, and you can see they're bright red, they're grabbing attention more so than any of the other ones. So that's a very useful way of looking at things. So again, you may want to adjust your colors to draw attention to various different aspects of your design. But I just wanted to show you Attention Insight because, like I say, this is a tool that I've started using myself to help me refine designs, advertising designs, landing page designs, website designs, and so on. And at the moment, it's on offer over on AppSumo. I don't know how long that will last for, but you can get a nice lifetime deal on it. And I'll drop a link in the description if you think this is a tool that you would find useful. If it is, follow that link, take a look at it, check it out, or just grab it yourself from AppSumo. It's entirely up to you, but it is an affiliate link, so it does give me a small percentage back if you decide to use it. Now, if you cast your mind back to the beginning of this video, I installed a couple of plugins, specifically a couple to do with WooCommerce. And one of those that I wanted to go through is how we can add in extra options, things like for delivery date, special instructions, card messages, and so on. To do that, we've got custom product add-ons installed, and we're just going to go in and take a look at how we set this up. So the first thing we need to do is say add a new form. Once we've done that, we're just going to give this a name, and we're going to call this default floral options. You can then set that up to what categories you want this to be associated with. Now I'm just going to set it up to everything at this point in time, so it doesn't really matter too much because I've not set this up as I would for a client. This is just pulled in that WooCommerce test data. So what we're going to do first of all is pull in a date option. So we want to put a delivery date in there. So what we can do is we can just take a look at the options on the right hand side, grab this delivery date, drop that inside there, and then we can start to configure this. So what we need to do is click on the little pencil icon and we can just start filling out the data that we want. You can set this to required if you want to, but we're just going to fill out some simple data because it's not necessarily required in this example. And other than putting in the label, we don't need to do anything else on that particular one. So we'll close that down, say close. Next up, we're going to add in a special instructions area. Now this is, again, really easy to do. So the special instructions is just basically going to be a text area. Drag and drop that to where we want it, pencil to edit it, and again, we're going to do the same thing again. We're just simply going to grab in the title. I'm going to say this is for special instructions, and we're going to drop in a placeholder so people know what they've got to put in there. So there we go, there's our next one. And again, you've got loads of options. You can specify how many rows, all those kinds of useful bits of information. Entirely up to you what you want to put in there. And then we do the same again. We're just going to drop another area in there, another text area. We'll drop that underneath, close that one down. And this one is, this time is going to be the card message. We're going to make this one required. So I say, yes, we want that required. We're going to drop in the title of card message. And then we're just going to put in some placeholder text underneath that. And again, all those same options are there. So close that down, and that pretty much is it. It's as simple as that to get these kind of things all put together. So once we've done that, we're just simply going to click on publish, and that's now created our default floral options, which can be applied to all of our products. And if we just hop over to our test page and come in and take a look at any of these products, because we've associated this with all of our products and all our categories, every single new product is going to have this added in there. So just be aware of that. We click and you can see there's our options for delivery date, and we can click and we can get a nice little date picker, drop in special instructions, card messages, and so on. Now we can obviously control and edit this to make sure everything looks absolutely spot on. Just want to show you how easy it is to actually add this information in. And I've also created a tutorial, a dedicated tutorial on this. So if you'd like to see more about how to use it and get more out of it, I'd recommend checking that out. And again, I'll drop a link in the description so you can take a look at that video and get a little bit more info. But it's a really cool free plugin, opens up a ton of opportunities and just gives you some easy expansion to add more details to each of your individual products or to specific categories and so on. Really cool. Now, obviously, it would be above and beyond to be able to create the tutorial that will show you every single aspect of creating a site like this. But hopefully what this has demonstrated is the technique, the way I would go through approaching things, the way I would set things up to work with a client to create a website. I'd still go through, refine, fine-tune, tweak, and do all those kinds of things to make sure that everything is totally and utterly consistent throughout the entire design. But hopefully this has given you an insight into how you can work with clients, how you can approach designs using Elementor, Elementor Pro, the Hello theme, WooCommerce, all those kinds of tools to create totally unique custom designs specific to your client's requirements without massive amounts of editing and underlying code edits and so on. You can pretty much do all of it these days with WooCommerce, WordPress, Elementor, and a range of other tools like I've shown you in this video.